Someone is falling hard for you because you chose them long before they learned how to choose themselves. You saw the quiet potential they carried beneath their self-doubt, the softness they hid under years of trying to be what the world demanded. You saw the person they were becoming, not just the one they were struggling to be. And something in your presence, something about the way you speak to them, the way you listen, the way you give without asking for applause, makes them realize that maybe love doesn't have to be earned through perfection. Maybe it can be received simply by existing. They don't tell you this outright. They don't yet understand how to articulate the shift happening inside them. But every time you show up, every time you extend patience where they expected judgment, every time you give them space without making them feel distant, something inside them breaks open. Something they thought was too bruised to feel anything again begins to warm. They are falling not because you dazzled them or convinced them, they're falling because, with you, they feel seen. And feeling seen is something they once thought they weren't worthy of. You don't realize the impact you have. You think you're just being kind, just being you. You don't understand how rare your consistency is, how healing your steadiness feels to someone who has been taught that love is conditional. You don't know that they analyze your smallest gestures long after you've forgotten them, how you remember the things they say in passing. How you look at them with a softness they don't know how to mirror yet, how you never raise your voice when they're overwhelmed or insecure. They're learning how to breathe again because your presence feels like permission to exist without pretenses. They have been through seasons where every emotion felt like too much, every dream felt too big, every mistake felt like a permanent stain. They learned to shrink themselves, to try not to take up too much space, to not bother anyone with their pain, to never ask for what they truly needed. They grew accustomed to being the one who gives, the one who supports, the one who carries burdens without letting anyone see how heavy they are. And then you came along, and without trying, you made them feel safe enough to unclench their heart. You showed them that affection isn't a reward, it's a language. You showed them that understanding isn't a luxury, it's a foundation. You showed them that choosing someone isn't about their perfection, it's about their humanity. And now they're beginning to understand that maybe they don't have to keep running from themselves. Maybe they can pause. Maybe they can rest. Maybe they can start believing that they deserve the kind of love that doesn't demand they bleed for it. When you look at them, you don't see their flaws as fatal. You don't magnify their insecurities. You don't disappear when they're not at their best. Instead, you stay. You listen. You give them the space to speak without fear of judgment. And that love, your calm, quiet, unwavering love, is something they've never known before. They're falling for you because you make them feel like they matter. You don't realize it, but your voice softens when you talk to them. Your eyes linger a little longer when they're speaking. Your presence makes them feel grounded. You make them feel worth choosing. And that's a feeling they've never quite had with anyone else. There were nights when they doubted themselves, days when they questioned their worth, moments when they spiraled into thoughts they never shared with anyone. But even on those days, something about the memory of you kept them steady. You became a reference point in their life, a quiet reminder that maybe not everyone leaves, that maybe not everyone gives up when things get messy. They're falling for you because you don't try to fix them. You don't push them to heal faster. You don't make their wounds inconvenient. You simply sit with them in their silence, walk with them through their confusion, and stand beside them even when they can't articulate why their heart feels heavy. You honor their journey without rushing it. And that alone makes them feel like maybe healing isn't impossible after all. When they start doubting themselves, you're the one who reminds them of their strength, not in a loud, motivational way, but in a soft reassurance that sounds like truth. When they say they're not good enough, you counter with evidence of their kindness, their depth, their courage. When they say they're too broken, you show them that brokenness isn't something to hide, it's something to grow through. They watch how you move through life with compassion. They watch how you treat others with respect. They watch how you give love without conditions. And they cannot help but fall for you, not because you're perfect, but because you make love feel possible again. You're teaching them how to let someone in. You're teaching them how to stop apologizing for existing. You're teaching them how to accept affection without flinching. You're teaching them how to believe in connections that don't crumble when vulnerability enters the room. They're falling for you slowly, deeply, sincerely because you speak to the part of them that has been silent for years. You speak to their fears with gentleness. You speak to their wounds with patience. You speak to their dreams with genuine belief. And even though they may try to hide it, you're becoming the person whose presence feels like home. They admire the way you love, not loudly, not dramatically, but consistently. They admire the way you understand without needing explanations. They admire the way you bring peace without effort. And they admire the way you continue to choose them even when they're unsure how to choose themselves. Your loyalty isn't loud, it's steady. Your affection isn't overwhelming, it's grounding. Your intention isn't rushed, it's clear. And because of all that, they find themselves wanting to be better, not because you demand it, but because being loved by you makes them want to grow. They know they're not easy. They know they overthink. They know they hide their emotions until they spill over. And yet, you're there. Not as someone who tolerates them, but as someone who cherishes them. Someone who believes there's beauty in their complexity. Someone who sees value in their vulnerability. Someone who doesn't make them feel like loving them is a burden. You make them feel chosen even on days they don't feel worth choosing. You make them feel wanted even on days they feel invisible. You make them feel understood even when they can't put their feelings into words. And that kind of love, the quiet, sincere, unwavering kind, is rare. It's the kind that stays. It's the kind that transforms. It's the kind that helps a person rebuild themselves from the inside out. their heart is opening because you've shown them what safety feels like. Their trust is growing because you've shown them what consistency looks like. Their hope is returning because you've shown them that love doesn't have to be a battlefield. And even though they may not say it out loud, they carry the thought of you like a gentle light inside their chest. Someone is falling hard for you, not because you rescued them, not because you solved their problems, not because you filled their emptiness, but because you walked beside them while they learned how to fill themselves. You didn't force them to change. You gave them space to grow. You gave them the encouragement they never got from others. You gave them the room to rediscover their own strength. Their attachment to you is not rooted in dependency, it's rooted in gratitude. It's rooted in admiration for the way you see the world. It's rooted in the way you make them feel alive again. And it's rooted in the fact that you make them believe in themselves more than they ever have before. They're falling because you're kind. They're falling because you're patient. They're falling because you're real. They're falling because your presence feels like a promise that love doesn't have to hurt to be meaningful. You showed them what it feels like to be chosen without performance. To be valued without conditions. To be loved without fear. You showed them what it feels like to be enough. One day, they will tell you everything, how they were scared at first, how your gentleness broke through their defenses, how your action spoke louder than any charm, how your consistency melted their hesitation, how your affection made them believe in healing again. One day, they will tell you how you changed the way they see themselves. One day, they will tell you how deeply they fell, but until then, they hope you keep being you, the you who speaks to their soul simply by existing. The you who chooses with intention. The you who makes love feel like a sanctuary. The you who unknowingly teaches them how to choose themselves again. And if you ever doubt your impact, remember this: someone is falling with their whole heart because you reminded them of their own. They never expected someone like you to walk into their world and shift the gravity of their life. They never asked for a love like this, gentle, unwavering, patient enough to wait for them to grow into the person they were meant to be. And yet, you showed up. You became the quiet reassurance to their restless mind, the calm to their storms, the soft place they never believed their heart deserved to rest. You don't see yourself as doing anything extraordinary, but to them, your presence is a miracle they're learning to trust. They've spent so long being the strong one for others, the one who carries everything without letting their voice tremble. They've been the listener, the healer, the giver. Rarely the one who gets held, heard, or chosen. Life taught them to survive, but you're teaching them how to live. Every time you show them kindness, a part of them melts that they didn't even know was frozen. Every time you look at them with sincerity, you rewrite a chapter in their heart that used to be filled with doubt. Every time you stay instead of pull away, you teach them that love doesn't have to vanish when things get difficult. They're falling for you because you see beyond the surface. You notice the small things, how their eyes shift when they're uncomfortable, how they fidget when they're unsure, how they stay silent when their emotions are too tangled to express. You don't pressure them to open up. You simply make the world safe enough for them to unclench their fears at their own pace, and even when they push you away out of habit, you don't walk out. You understand that people who haven't been chosen before often flinch when something real stands in front of them. You understand that their hesitation isn't rejection, it's self-preservation. And so you give them time, space, warmth. You give them tenderness instead of frustration, understanding instead of judgment, presence instead of pressure. They're falling because you love in a way that doesn't demand attention. Your love is not loud, it's steady. Not dramatic, meaningful. Not rushed. Intentional. You don't try to impress, they simply feel drawn to the authenticity of who you are. You don't try to overwhelm, they simply feel safe in your calm. They're falling because being with you feels like coming up for air after years of holding their breath. You don't realize how deeply they appreciate the way you never make them feel like they're too much, even on their messy days. The world has told them they're hard to read, hard to handle, hard to love. But with you, they're not hard. They're understood. You notice the things they hide behind their smiles. You see the exhaustion beneath their strength. You feel the softness behind their defenses. And instead of being scared of their depth, you cherish it. You treasure the parts of them others overlooked. They're falling for you because, for the first time, they don't have to pretend, they don't have to act put together. They don't have to be the strong one, they don't have to silence their feelings, they don't have to be perfect. With you, they can be human. With you, they can be vulnerable. With you, they can be honest. With you, they can be themselves, not the version the world expects, but the version their soul has been longing to show someone who wouldn't run. When they speak, you listen like their words matter. When they're quiet, you stay like their silence doesn't scare you. When they're unsure, you reassure instead of retreating. When they imagine worst-case scenarios, because their mind is used to preparing for heartbreak, you gently remind them that not everyone chooses to leave. They're falling because you choose them in ways they never thought they'd experience. You choose them softly when they're gentle. You choose them firmly when they're afraid. You choose them patiently when they're healing. You choose them whole, even when they're still learning how to be. And the truth is, you're teaching them a new kind of love, one that isn't built on fear, scarcity, or sacrifice. A love that doesn't exhaust but nourishes. A love that doesn't confuse but clarifies. A love that doesn't demand but invites. They've spent years believing that love means enduring pain, proving worth, performing perfection. But you're showing them that love can be the opposite. That love can feel like coming home after a long journey they didn't know they were on. Your kindness resets their nervous system, your respect repairs their beliefs, your patience rebuilds their hope, your affection rewrites their story. And even if they haven't found the words to tell you yet, they feel all of it. They replay your messages in their head before they fall asleep. They remember the softness in your voice hours after the conversation ends. They hold on to your words because your voice feels like truth in a world that has lied to them too many times. Someone is falling for you because you make love feel like a sanctuary instead of a battlefield, a place to rest, not a place to hide, a place to grow, not a place to shrink, a place to breathe, not a place to fight for oxygen. You don't just make them feel loved, you make them feel possible, possible of healing, possible of deserving happiness, possible of discovering themselves again, possible of building a future where they are not afraid to be fully known. They're falling for you because you've become the softness they never thought they'd find. They're falling because your presence feels like a quiet promise that they no longer have to walk alone. They're falling because even on the days they struggle to choose themselves, you choose them without hesitation, and in choosing them, you are teaching them how to choose themselves. They're learning to look in the mirror with kinder eyes. They're learning to speak to themselves with gentler words. They're learning to treat their heart with more patience. They're learning to accept that love doesn't require them to be flawless. They're falling because you're helping them grow, not by pushing, but by staying. Not by demanding, but by believing. Not by forcing, but by showing them what love can look like when someone finally means it, and as they fall, they are becoming softer, becoming braver, becoming open, becoming whole, becoming someone who now believes they are worth choosing, not just by you, but by themselves too. They don't love easily, but when they love, they give their heart fully, quietly, honestly. And they are slowly realizing that the person they want to trust that heart with is you. Someone is falling hard for you, not because you saved them, but because you showed them how to save themselves. And they will remember that for the rest of their life. They don't know how to tell you that the way you entered their life changed everything. They don't know how to tell you that your presence is the reason they started believing in their own heart again. They don't know how to tell you that the courage they're slowly finding isn't accidental. It's something you've breathed into them simply by seeing them. Truly seeing them, even in the moments they felt invisible, and now, as their feelings grow deeper and sharper and more undeniable, they find themselves standing at the edge of a truth they can no longer avoid. They are falling for you in the kind of way that reshapes a person from the inside out. They are falling in a way that feels like sunlight cracking through a long winter. They are falling in a way that feels like finally exhaling after years of holding their breath. You became a turning point in their life without even trying. In a world that demanded they stay guarded, you became the exception. In a heart trained to expect disappointment, you became the unexpected blessing. In a mind accustomed to overthinking, you became the quiet certainty. And in a life where they often felt overlooked, you became the one who chooses them again and again, not loudly, but sincerely, not dramatically, but consistently. They're falling because you didn't just show interest, you showed care. You didn't just show affection, you showed intention. You didn't just show up, you stayed. They didn't know that someone could choose them with that much devotion without asking anything in return. They didn't know that someone could look at them, really look, and see someone worth loving, worth believing in, worth holding close. And the truth is, you don't just make them feel chosen. You make them feel safe choosing you back. There's a tenderness in the way they think about you, a softness that wasn't there before. It's in the way they replay your words like a quiet melody. In the way they recall your kindness as if it were sunlight warming their skin. In the way their heart steadies whenever you cross their mind. Nothing about this love is rushed or forced, it's blooming naturally, growing from every gentle moment you've shared with them. They've loved people before, but this is different. This feels deeper, safer, freer. This feels like love that doesn't just fill the cracks, it helps them rebuild the foundation. This feels like love that doesn't demand perfection, it welcomes truth. This feels like love that doesn't suffocate, it allows them to breathe. They're falling for you because you've shown them what it means to be met instead of tolerated, valued instead of used, held instead of handled, cherished instead of judged. They're falling because you make love feel like a partnership instead of a performance, and as much as they are falling for you, they are also falling back into themselves. They are rediscovering parts of their heart they had abandoned. They are reclaiming pieces of their soul they had forgotten. They are nurturing dreams they once buried. You sparked that. You softened that ground. You made their inner landscape fertile again. You became the reminder that life still has warmth, that trust still exists, that love can still be gentle. You didn't do this through grand gestures, you did it through the small ways you choose them daily. By listening when they speak. By understanding even when they struggle to explain. By giving them space when they need it. By reminding them that they are worthy even when their mind tells them otherwise. They're falling in love with your loyalty, your consistency, your quiet strength. They're falling in love with the way you see beauty in their complexity. They're falling in love with the way you hold space for them without expecting them to earn it. They're falling in love with the way you make even silence feel comfortable, and as they fall, they're not afraid, not this time. Because something in you makes fear soften into trust. Something in you makes doubt fade into clarity. Something in you makes the world feel a little less heavy, a little less chaotic, a little less cold. They don't know how to tell you yet, not in full, not in detail, not in all the ways their heart wants to, but one day they will. One day they will find the words to tell you how your gentleness changed them, how your patience healed parts of them they thought were unfixable, how your presence restored their faith in connection. They'll tell you about the nights they couldn't sleep because their heart was overflowing with the weight of realizing just how deeply they care. They'll tell you about the moments they almost confessed but held back because they wanted to do it right. They'll tell you about the times they whispered your name into the quiet just because it felt like letting their soul breathe. And when that day comes, they won't just tell you how they feel, they'll show you. They'll show you in the way they stand beside you without hesitation. They'll show you in the way they choose you with the same intention you've always shown them. They'll show you in the way they love you with patience, depth, tenderness, and truth. They'll show you in the way they Mirror the kindness you've poured into them. They'll show you in the way they finally believe they deserve the love you give so effortlessly, because they do. And because you help them see that they do. You opened a door inside them that they were too afraid to touch. You reminded them that being loved is not a privilege for the perfect, it's a right for the human. You reminded them that love should never shrink a person, only expand them. And you reminded them that choosing someone, truly choosing them, is one of the most transformative things one heart can do for another. Someone is falling hard for you because you showed them a love that doesn't demand that they be anything but themselves. You showed them a love that waits, listens, understands, encourages. You showed them a love that feels like home, like truth, like finally belonging somewhere they don't have to perform. They're falling in love with you because you loved them before they knew how to love themselves. They're choosing you because you chose them even in their uncertainty. They're staying because, with you, their heart feels safe for the first time in a long time, and they are grateful, deeply, quietly, endlessly grateful, for you, because you didn't just change their life, you changed the way they see themselves, you changed what they believe they deserve. You changed what love means to them. And that is why their heart is already yours, softly, steadily, sincerely.